Hello you guys, it's Andy. Welcome back to the channel. Sean O'Malley is the new Bantamweight champion. And what does that mean? A whole bunch of different types of fights that we can make in the Bantamweight division. I'm going to try and go through majority, not all, but the majority of the Bantamweight division. The top contenders mostly, and book the next fights for all of the top contenders in the Bantamweight division. And we're going to start off right at the top with Sean O'Malley. What should his next fight be? Well, realistically, it should be three people. Aljo rematch, Merab, or Corey Sandhagen. Those guys have been earning their way to the top, and Aljamain was just a champion, and usually sometimes the champion or the former champion usually gets a rematch, but maybe not in this case. It's probably not going to be any of those three guys. It's going to be Chito Vera. So I'm going to book Sean O'Malley versus Chito Vera. The reason why, and obviously Chito does not deserve it over any of these guys. He barely deserved it. He barely won his fight against Pedro Munoz. What makes you think that he deserves a fight over a guy like Corey Sandhagen, who Corey just beat Marlon in the beginning of the year? So why are we doing this? Well, there is a history between the two. There is a little bit of bad blood between, because obviously years ago, back in 2020, a fraudulent victory by Marlon Vera over Sean O'Malley happened, obviously, because if you guys didn't know, Sean O'Malley got injured in the fight. I think he got kicked in the peroneal nerve or something like that, and pretty much he couldn't walk and really couldn't fight in that fight. And Marlon was able to put him away and get a TKO victory over Sean O'Malley. That was 3 years ago. Obviously, to me, that is a fluke victory, and I'm not a big fan of Chito Vera, to be honest with you. I believe that Chito Vera is stupidly overrated, in my honest opinion. I know a lot of people really do like Chito. I'm not a big fan of Chito because of his fans, mostly. I think they overrate him big time. But I will make this fight. It just makes the most sense. I think that the UFC wants to kind of give Sean kind of like an easier matchup, especially to start off with, because to me, out of those three guys, I think Chito is the easiest, or out of the four guys that I just named, Chito is the easiest person for Sean O'Malley to fight. And it will still do a lot of pay-per-view numbers because there is history between the two of them. So you want to capitalize off that and have Chito versus Sean O'Malley. You could probably do that at the end of the year in December. They both won it. And obviously, I think Sean O'Malley wants to kind of get somebody who is a favorable matchup against him. So you do that match against him and Chito Vera at the end of the year. I think that makes a lot of sense. Even though it doesn't in a way as well, just because Chito doesn't deserve it over like a Merab, who has been continuously winning his fights over everybody. But he's just not going to get the title shot because that doesn't do numbers. That's number one. And number two, I don't think the UFC wants to make that matchup. They want to keep Sean O'Malley as the champion for a little longer than just like, what, a few months? So they're going to do him versus Chito to start off with for his first title defense. So there you go. The next fight that I'm going to be talking about is for Merab. Merab is pretty much kind of stuck in no man's land because even though he's the number one contender, he's probably not going to get the fight against Sean O'Malley. But who can he fight? Corey Sandhagen. I like this fight big time. I think Corey Sandhagen is a great matchup for Merab, and we'll see where Corey Sandhagen is currently. Obviously, I know that Corey kind of feels like that he can get a title shot if he just waits. But in my honest opinion, I think that it's going to probably be a while for Corey Sandhagen to get a title shot. So I think you can do this matchup very soon. Corey Sandhagen, well, not actually very soon because Corey Sandhagen is actually going through an injury. So if you don't want to do this matchup, I guess this Merab is just going to continue to sit. But I really do like this matchup. I think it's definitely a step up in competition for Corey Sandhagen. And they could probably do this next year, maybe in February, March. I don't know how long it's going to take for Corey to get better from his injury. But I really do like this matchup. Because I just want to see if Corey's at that level, because somebody like a Merab is a dangerous opponent for anybody in the division. He really is. He is a nightmare matchup for just about everybody just because he is relentless in his takedowns. Even though he doesn't get the takedown, he will always shoot like 25 times, and if he only gets 3, that is a victory nonetheless for Merab. Merab is always going to continuously shoot for takedowns. That's just how he is. And that's pretty much going to be the same thing between him and Corey Sandhagen. And obviously, Corey Sandhagen has gotten a lot better with, obviously, his takedowns. His grappling has gotten a lot better. And I want to see how it looks against a guy like Merab. I think that's a great matchup. And you could probably do that sometime next year, maybe in February or March. because I don't think Merab wants to keep sitting. I think he wants to fight somebody, right? So I think that fight makes sense. And if not, if you don't want to do that fight between him and Sandhagen, I think him, Merab, and Henry Cejudo makes a lot of sense too. I think that fight is really good. I think that fight is actually really interesting. Obviously, because you got Cejudo, who is obviously one of the top guys in the bantamweight division, going up against Merab. I think that is definitely a very competitive fight, and I would like to see how Cejudo does against somebody like Merab. So yeah, you could do one of those matches, but I prefer the Sandhagen one. I want to see him versus Sandhagen, because I got something else in mind for Henry Cejudo, okay? So the next fight that I'm going to book is Henry Cejudo versus Petr Yan. I think this fight is fantastic. On paper, I think is great. A lot of people have been counting out Petr Yan. I am not one of those people. I think that Petr Yan can beat Henry Cejudo. This matchup, to me, makes a lot of sense, to be honest, in my opinion. And here's why. First of all, Petr Yan is a bigger name than Merab for Henry Cejudo. I think Cejudo wants to fight bigger names, and Petr Yan is a pretty big name in the division. And this is a good fight back for Petr Yan. I understand that a lot of people want to give Petr Yan somebody like a Song Yadong or somebody like that, and you can do that fight for sure, and we can talk about that fight in a second. But in my opinion, I really do think that this fight, you could put this on a pay-per-view, and you can put this like the third fight of a pay-per-view card, and it's going to fit perfectly there. It's fantastic. It's a great matchup, and I still think that Petr Yan can hang with the best of them. I think he could beat a guy like Henry Cejudo. I generally believe that. I think he can also beat a guy like Song Yadong. We're just seeing what happened last time between him and Merab. Merab is just a different type of beast, a different type of animal, who is unlike anybody in the UFC. Merab will do that pretty much to damn near everybody in the division, to be honest with you. If he doesn't get put out, he's going to do that to everybody in the division, including Aljamain Sterling, his own friend, which he will never fight, by the way. Aljamain and Merab will never fight each other, so I didn't even consider that fight to even happen. It makes a lot of sense, ranking-wise. You could do the number one versus the former champ, and it makes perfect sense. But Merab will never fight Aljamain Sterling, let's just be honest. But Petr Yan and Henry Cejudo intrigues me big time. I want this fight to happen. I think this fight you can do probably this year, maybe later on in October. You could probably do this. You could put this on the Abu Dhabi fight card, and I think it will fit perfectly. I mean, even though I think the Abu Dhabi fight card is pretty much booked, but you could put this on maybe in a Fight Night main event. That would be great. I don't know how Henry Cejudo will feel about that, so more than likely, it probably won't go on a Fight Night. That would be in a pay-per-view. That would be a pay-per-view type fight, in my honest opinion, and I think it makes a lot of sense. I would like to see how the takedown defense has gotten better for Petr Yan, especially after he faced Merab. I feel like he's been honing in on that for sure, and I would like to see the striking battle between the two of them. I think they will strike a lot in this fight, and I think Petr Yan will do really well against somebody like a Henry Cejudo. So yeah, I would like to see this fight happen. So I will do Cejudo versus Petr Yan. So let's go ahead and get into the next fight. Aljamain, what is next for the former champion? Well, Aljamain Sterling is kind of in a lull right now. I got two fights in mind. First off, you can do the fight that I think he does not want to do, which I believe he will not agree to. Him versus Umar Nurmagomedov. I know, that is fucking horrible, doing that to a former champ. Giving him a guy who is like, what, rank 11th or 13th or whatever, and just feeding him to Umar Nurmagomedov. So we're not going to do that, okay? That's one fight that you can do that makes a lot of sense in that division, though. When it comes to the 135-pound division for Aljamain Sterling, the only fight that makes the most sense is Sean O'Malley again, the rematch. That's the only fight to me that makes a lot of sense. Because everybody right now is booked. You're not going to do him versus Cejudo again. You're not going to do him versus, what is his name? You're not going to do him versus Cheeto, because Cheeto's going to be busy, I believe. And you're not going to do him versus Yan again, the trilogy. You're not going to do that either. You're going to do somebody who's later on in the rankings, somebody who is obviously really unproven, and he will have to fight somebody like Umar Nurmagomedov. But I don't think he's going to do that. I think that he should go up in weight and fight, God, I forgot his name, Brian Ortega. Brian Ortega versus Aljamain Sterling. I think Aljamain Sterling would like to go up in weight. I still think that even though he wants to probably still fight at bantamweight, I think that featherweight the weight cut will be a lot less worse for him. And I think that he will do really good against a lot of guys in the featherweight division. Will he lose to a guy like, obviously, the champ and a Max Holloway? Absolutely. I believe that he will lose to those guys. Even I think a Yair Rodriguez will be really bad for Aljamain Sterling. You know, a guy who is a really experienced striker like Yair Rodriguez, that is a really tough fight for him. But who is somebody who, to me, is kind of on even playing fields, in sort of sense? Brian Ortega. Brian Ortega's not really doing anything right now. Why not have that fight be the introduction to Aljamain Sterling in the featherweight division? I think that's a perfect fight. I think that fight makes a lot of sense to me, and that will put Aljamain as a contender in the featherweight division if he's able to get a victory. If he's able to get a victory over Brian Ortega, which I believe that fight can favor Aljamain Sterling. I think Aljamain Sterling's grappling is very good, and I think he can compete with somebody like a Brian Ortega. Brian Ortega's jiu-jitsu is fantastic, but I still believe that fight, to me, makes a lot of sense. Brian Ortega's not a crazy striker. I think he's a very good striker, but he's not going to just... I don't think he's going to completely dominate Aljamain in the striking department compared to Sean O'Malley. And if he doesn't want to make that weight cut again and go up to 145, I believe he said win or lose that he wants to go up in weight anyway. I mean, especially if he wanted to go up and fight Volkanovski. Let's just be honest. That fight, I mean, that was going to be horrible for Aljamain Sterling. Even if he won this fight, that was going to be horrible for Aljamain Sterling. Let's just be honest. But listen, get a few fights in the division. You can probably... That fight and then another fight, and then you're going to get a title shot, 100%. Because Max is probably never... Bro, listen, Max is probably never going to get another title shot ever again, to be honest. That's what it feels like to me. He's just going to continue to fight the guys in featherweight, and that's it. I think that Max should just go up in weight to 155, because at this point, nothing's going to happen for him. And he can be... I think that Max can compete with some of the guys in lightweight, but that's besides the point. Aljamain Sterling versus Brian Ortega, I think that fight makes a lot of sense. I think you can't just give Aljamain Max Holloway immediately. You have to ease him into the featherweight division. So you give him somebody like a Brian Ortega a winnable fight, and a fight that's pretty even on paper. And I think I favor Aljamain in this fight, to be honest with you. I think his grappling is better than Brian Ortega's, so I think that he will be able to do pretty well against him. So let's do that fight at 145, and I don't know if it will be the last time we ever see him at the bantamweight division. I think at some point he wants to go back down and become the champ once again and get that rematch against Sean O'Malley, because there is still money to be made, I believe, for that fight. So I think you do that 100%, okay? So Aljamain versus Brian Ortega. Dominic Cruz, I don't understand. This is like, what the hell? Dominic Cruz. I don't know if he's done or not, but listen, hear me out on this. Let's run it back. Dominic Cruz, Cody Garbrandt. Fuck it. I don't give a shit anymore. Listen, what else is there for Dominic Cruz? If he wants to fight again, I don't know what the thought process of Dominic Cruz is, to be honest with you. I don't know if he wants to fight ever again. I don't know if he's retired or what. He is still ranked. He has not been taken out of the rankings. Cody Garbrandt obviously went back up to 135. He had a little bit of issues. He did not make his fight against Mario Bautista because I believe he was injured or something like that. But I think it's a fight that both guys, if you were to give Dominic Cruz that fight, Cody Garbrandt, I think he would like to do it. I think that fight, he will get paid a good amount to do that fight. I think same thing with Cody Garbrandt, and it's good for Cody Garbrandt. That will get him back in the rankings if he does win this fight. This is more of a fantasy. I don't think that this is not going to happen. I genuinely believe it. But I say, fuck it. Let's just have some fun. Do it. Dominic Cruz, Cody Garbrandt 2. I want to see it. Fuck it. What else is... Listen, let's just make fights... You know, because if Dominic Cruz continues to fight the top guys in bantamweight, I don't think he's going to have a crazy amount of success. Obviously, he beat Pedro Munoz, but I don't think he's going to beat guys like Song Yadong. I don't think that's him versus Song Yadong to me makes any sense. I think Song is going to want to get a better fight, which we'll get into in a second, because I got a fight in mind for Song Yadong. But in my opinion, in my honest estimation, I think that this fight is perfect. I think... Obviously, they have history because they fought against each other for the Bantamweight Championship. And it was the greatest performance that I think I've ever seen in the Bantamweight division ever in my life. Cody Garbrandt in that fight was absolutely fantastic. He was spectacular. And I believe that, I think a lot of people, if they saw that fight happen, I think they want to see it again. I believe that it will be a lot more competitive than the first fight. I think current Cody Garbrandt versus current Dominic Cruz, that is a very competitive fight. And is obviously something to appease to the fans. It's kind of like similar to what the UFC did, was it last year? It was either last year or the year before with Nick Diaz against Robbie Lawler. They appeased the fans with that. Did the fight make really any sense? I mean, it's just for the fans. At the end of the day, it's for the fans, and I think it will be great for Cody. It will get him back in the rankings, which is what he wants. And yeah, I think they should do that fight. Cody versus Dominic Cruz. Fuck it. Book it. Do a Fight Night main event or put that on the pay-per-view. Slap that as the first fight on the card. I think that everybody will be happy with that. So let's go ahead and get that situated. Okay, UFC? Now, Song Yadong, to me, the guy who has a whole lot of upside. Him versus Petr Yan makes a lot of sense to me. If you don't want to do Cejudo versus Petr Yan, I think that you got to give Song Yadong the opportunity to fight a guy like Petr Yan. Because obviously, to me, Song Yadong is one of the guys who has a lot of potential. One guys who has a whole lot of upside to become a possible contender in the bantamweight division. And I think a perfect fight. I think the fight that the fans will love to see, because it's going to be a stand-up war, in my honest opinion. I mean, I think Petr Yan might actually try and use his grappling against Song Yadong. But here's the deal with Song Yadong. His takedown defense is fantastic. So I really do believe that this will be a stand-up fight. This fight is fantastic. I try to think of other people, but it really, there's nobody, in my opinion, that Song Yadong could possibly fight him. Like, you can't do him versus Corey Sandhagen again, because Corey already won that fight, and it doesn't make any sense for Corey Sandhagen to do that, right? You can't do Henry Cejudo. I don't think Henry Cejudo will be interested. I don't think him versus Merab makes any sense unless Merab wants to be active, and Song wants to, pretty much jump up over everybody in the division and be the #1 guy in the division. Then he can do that fight. But I don't think Merab wants to do that fight either. Merab wants to fight somebody in the top 5, if anything, or the champion. You know what I mean? So I think, in my opinion, this fight is perfect. It is beautiful. It makes so much sense to me. This fight is fantastic. If Cejudo does not want to do a fight with Petr Yan, do this fight, book it, and you can have this fight sometime later this year. You can do this later this year, and it will be fantastic. You do this as a Fight Night main event, and people will be interested in watching this, okay? So yeah, that is pretty much the majority of the bantamweight division. Obviously, I didn't talk about a whole bunch of people. I didn't talk about Pedro Munoz, because I don't really care for Pedro Munoz all that much. The people that I talked about is what I really care about, is fights that I want to see. So let me know what you guys think. Do you guys agree with my fights that I created? Let me know in the comment section below. Be sure to like the video, by the way. It really helps the algorithm. And subscribe as well if you are new. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys soon with another video. Peace.